Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome back to the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship. This is round number 7 of the season, coming to you tonight from Watkins Glen. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Aaron Smith, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Joshua Wilkie. Tonight we're headed stateside for 2 more 30-minute long races, and while the challenges of the races themselves that we have today are certainly pretty important, these drivers are getting to the point in the season where they also need to think about their respective championship fights. The pressure is ramping up, and honestly, Aaron, I feel like pressure and GT3 racing at Watkins Glen go together about as well as peanut butter and battery acid. So I think we're in for a very tense day of racing action here at the Glen.
I mean, I don't like peanut butter or battery acid, so I wouldn't go well with either. But yeah, this is kind of the time in the season where you do really need to, as people would say nowadays, lock in, as especially Lucchesi and Dennebrega said it every single time we come to one of these races. It's the big fight that most of us are watching. Dennebrega seems to just have an edge over his teammates so far this season. It's about 15 points separating those two at the moment. Lucchesi's just had a bit of a rough last few rounds. He just hasn't. Just a few tiny mistakes. It was a pit lane error in Montreal, and I think it might have been something similar last week as well. And I don't know. Yeah, Lucchesi really does need to step it up. He did not perform as well as we'd expected at Austria. And, well, we're hoping for Lucchesi to be back on form today, as it looks like it's going to be Porsche Cup again, as, well, it just looks absolutely insane at this Watkins Glen circuit. And in all of the classes you can see on the left-hand side, there's at least 3 or 4 Porsches in the top 5 in every class. So, you know, if you're in a Porsche today, you're laughing, and Lucchesi is one of those drivers, so you could say he has a decent chance of beating his teammate, at least this time round.
We'll have to wait and see what kind of cars are going to be the quicker ones. As you just mentioned, the Porsche's looking fast already. However, Ryan Odin's in that Ferrari in the elite category, jumping up to the top of the pylon as it stands at the moment. 1 minute 43.118. That's a pretty good lap time for the Alpha 1 esports driver. We'll have to see if he can try and convert that with his practice pace, my apologies, into the qualifying session later on, and the 2 races that we have to look forward to as well. And you brought up the championship storylines, because we got 3 classes that we have to keep our eyes on all throughout this season, Elite, Premier, and Evo, and all three of these classes have just been a completely different case. The Elite category has been a tale of dominance for the two RDSA esports drivers, Luke Lucchesi in that Porsche, and Tristan Dennebrega, our championship leader, those two covered by about 15 points. It's been a topsy-turvy season for them, but Luke Lucchesi has kind of hit a rough spot, as you pointed out a couple of moments ago, Aaron. To begin this season, all the way up to round 5, he had finished no worse than 3rd. Then, after a 4th place run for the 6th race of the season, he's followed that up with a 7th, a 3rd, and a 6th. So he hasn't really been too quick as of late, and really the tale of consistency has switched to his teammate Tristan Dennebrega, despite the fact he's had some pretty rough races throughout this season. Race 2 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where he finished 10th in class, and then going back to the 6th race of the season where he finished 13th. But despite that, though, Dennebrega has been very fast in that RDSA Esports McLaren. Could be part of the reason why he's leading the championship. But Ryan Odin's 3rd in the Elite standings. He may try and impress based off the fact he's currently running very quick in this practice session. Have a feeling that we may have a bit more of a fight on our hands. The RDSA Esports duo may have a thorn sticking into their side. Moving over to the Premier category, this season has been very up and down, topsy-turvy to be sure, with a whole lot of storylines to keep our eyes on. The fight, though, is looking like it's very much on between Brecht Bearings and Matt Hoyland. Those two cars are only covered by 2 points. Hoyland has been about as inconsistent as you can get. I'm not really sure if that's a bad or indifferent thing here. He has finishes, well, he has a DNF for the 2nd race of the season, a 13th, another DNF, and 11th, but outside of those races, he's won every single one of them. So Hoyland has been very quick thus far this season in that Premier Class BMW. However, he finds himself 2nd in the point standings to Brecht Bearings in that Porsche, who every single time he's finished on the podium, it's either been 2nd or 1st. So Brecht looking to try and carry some momentum heading into this race off the back of a victory at race 2 at the Red Bull Ring just 1 week ago. Then in the Evo category, it has been a complete change in form for Ashley Brooks, who is the dominant championship leader in the early stages of the season. However, things have completely switched over to the Frenchman, the DXT Magenta car of Francois Brandet. He is off the back of 4 straight victories from this season, leads the Evo standings 24 points in front of Ashley Brooks, who is quite a long ways in front of Robin Noel Brown a little bit farther down in 3rd. So it's looking like Brandet, the Frenchman, very fast as it stands at the moment in the GT3 Evo category. But honestly, Aaron, I have a feeling that just based off going through those championship points, it's going to be really hard for us to try and figure out which championship is going to be the most topsy-turvy.
Yeah, I would say that the Elite standings do seem to be taking a bit of a shuffle over the last 2 rounds. I mean, Van Gortel at Austria just turned up. I mean, he has missed a few rounds here and there, but I mean, his performance at Austria was absolutely superb, especially that 2nd race where he came all the way from 12th after that reverse grid, put him all the way back to 11th place. My apologies. And then in the wet, just blasted his way through the field. And I do mean blasted. He was insanely quick. No one could keep up with that man. And, well, at least for today, it's not raining, so he won't be able to show off his wet weather prowess this time. But he's not too slow, but he's not fighting for podiums or even wins this time round here at Watkins Glen. But maybe he can get some fortune in the race that can push him a little bit further up the standings. But yeah, those elite standings, if it wasn't for Lucchesi and Dennebrega just dominating, I'd say, the first 5 rounds, it would be a lot closer, as Francois Brandet just giving the wall love tap on the exit of the last corner. But yeah, you kind of wish we could have started the elite standings about, I want to say, 4 rounds ago. I think it was Spain, where after that everything kind of just kicked off, and it's been a lot closer since then. And who knows, we've still got 6 rounds to go, 2 tonight, and then the rest in the coming weeks. And it could still get close, but things will have to go really bad for Dennebrega and Lucchesi for that to happen. But I mean, at least so far today, in these practice sessions, they aren't the quickest. They're currently 4th and 5th respectively. And Fairley, Behrens and Oaten's currently your top 3 in the elite category. So it could be interesting for the elite race victories today. And like I mentioned earlier on, 2 30-minute races this week. And of course, for that second race, reverse the top 12. And then next week, I believe it's at Fuji. That will be the last 1 hour race. And I'm really, really looking forward to that track. I love Fuji. I think an hour race around there is going to be a joy to watch. It's going to be the last double points of the season, of course, for that 1 hour race. And that could really swing things in any of our 3 championships tonight.
That's a very good point that you bring up there, Aaron. That 1 hour race in Fuji coming up in the not too distant future. When I say not too distant future, it's coming up in literally 1 week's time here on Apex Racing TV from the SR GT3 Championship. That is going to be a really important race, and it's going to be a challenging one for those drivers as well. Got those killer curbs around the racetrack. I remember it was one of the last times I have done a GT3 only race broadcast at Fuji. It was for the Apex Racing League GT3 Championship a couple of seasons ago, and I saw a driver barrel rolling their way coming out the final corner, hit one of those killer sausage curves on the inside, and just start tumbling around like it was going out of style. It looked like a gymnast move instead of one that you'd see in a 2-ton race car. So we may not see any aerial acrobatics like that, but still expecting to see some fireworks at Fuji in 1 week's time, and all throughout the rest of the season as well, because following that and tonight's action here at Watkins Glen, gonna have 2 more 30-minute long race rounds. So that'll be 2 30-minute long races at Sebring, followed by another 2 at Laguna Seca just 1 week after that. So a whole lot of stuff to keep our eyes peeled out for in terms of the championship fights, in terms of how these drivers may tackle the races, and some drivers that we have in all the classes who, despite showing a whole lot of pace, have not been able to grab a victory thus far this season. Looking at one currently at the front of the elite standings, Ryan Odens. Despite the fact he has been quick in that Ferrari virtually all season long, Aaron, he has yet to grab a victory thus far this season. It has been it's been an odd case for him. He's had finishes of third, and second in some of the races we've had thus far this season, but yet to get that victory. However, I have a feeling that Alpha 1 esports driver may try and make an opportunity here at the Glen. He's certainly showing a lot of pace in this practice session, as he has all season long. I feel like that first win is coming.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that I believe it was him who was leading at Indy Road for a long, long time. And all of a sudden, he disconnected from the race. I think he had about an 8-second lead or maybe more when it happened. So, I mean, that would have been a real... This championship would look a lot different, because obviously in that race, he ended up getting a DNF because of it. But if he had stayed in that race and won it, he'd obviously have a lot more points and would have taken points off everyone else. And he's currently 3rd, albeit 60 points behind Lucchesi, and then, what's that, 75 points behind Dana Braga. But had he gotten that win, he probably wouldn't be too far behind Lucchesi. I think it would have given him a bit more momentum as well. Over the next few rounds. But yeah, I'm also shocked that even after that he wasn't able to get a win. He has been very consistent, admittedly. He's had a couple rounds where it's been a little bit iffy. The second race at Austria, he finished 12th in Elite, which is obviously not where you want to be, but he definitely has been quick and realistically has looked kind of top 5 Elite drivers this entire season, minimum. So, you know, him being on top of the practice standings at the moment, you would expect big things from him tonight, and perhaps maybe today is the day he can finally grab that first win. And with 6 rounds to go, and you know, it's not impossible, but he's going to have to be on his A game for literally every single race that we have remaining in this season. And well, just a quick mention to the other classes. I think, like you talked about, the Premier class, 2 points between Hoyland and Bearings. But again, like you mentioned, Hoyland's just weird. I don't know what he does sometimes. He's just gotten so many wins, but then if he's not winning, he's last or he's crashed. So very weird from Matt Hoyland. But I mean, he is still fighting for that Premier Championship, and 2 points off. Not much of a gap between himself and Brett Bearings at all, but unfortunately, Bearings is currently on top of the standings in this practice session, so he looks to be in good form coming into Watkins Glen. And then finally, our Evo standings, Ashley Brooks. I think you talked about it a bit as well. The fact that Ashley looked so good at the start of the season, and then it just fell off completely. It was Spain, I think, where I think he got caught up in that first lap crash into the first 3 corners. And just ever since then, he's been all over the place. And he's not been slower, really, but just been getting himself caught in a few more incidents, making a few more mistakes. And has, to be fair, actually been just a tad bit slower than I think he'd like to be. I mean, currently he's 6/10 off the man up front in Evo, which is quite a big gap here at Watkins Glen. But no pit stops for them to worry about tonight. None of the sorts, just a full-on sprint race for 30 minutes. And plenty of points to grab, but plenty of points to lose as well.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point in terms of Ashley Brooks and how it looks like his performance is just completely slammed headfirst into a concrete wall. You can really just see it in terms of the results that he's posted thus far this season. Kicked the season off with 3 straight victories, so first, followed that by a 9th place run. The race after that, it's like, oh, well, that's not very good. And bearing in mind, this is not an overall 9th place position, that is a class 9th place position, so that's not an ideal result in the slightest. Then first the week after that, then 11th, 2nd, 12th, and 5th. So Brooks's results have just slammed straight into a concrete wall, and it really shows you the sort of the pace differential and the luck differential that has certainly thrown the way of Ashley Brooks and Francois Brandet, because Brandet kicked the season off with 2 6th-place finishes in the first and third races of the season, the 1-hour-long race at Le Mans to kick the season off, and the second race at Indianapolis. He got 2 6th-place runs and a 3rd place in that time. Didn't even bother showing up to the 4th race of the season, the 1-hour round at Barcelona. But ever since he came back to this series for round 5 for race 1 at Interlagos, he's had runs of 2nd, 1st, 1st, and 1st. So it's been just a complete role reversal between those two. Things were going so well, so long for Ashley Brooks, then they went so badly, so quickly. Francois Brandet looking to capitalize, and I feel like if Robin Noel Brown hasn't had as rough of luck as he has had thus far this season, he may very well displace Ashley Brooks down to 3rd, because he was running pretty good thus far this season. Kicked the season off with 3 straight 2nd place runs behind Ashley Brooks, but then as Brooks ran into some bad luck, Robin Noel Brown has as well. Hasn't finished better than 3rd since the 3rd race of the season at Indianapolis, where he finished 2nd. But Robin Noel Brown, I think if he didn't have as bad of luck as he's had thus far this season, Ashley Brooks would be in even more trouble than he already is.
Well, we're moving into the qualifying session here at Watkins Glen. Actually, a fairly difficult qualifying that a lot of people, I don't think, really take that much into consideration, as it is so difficult to hook up a lap here, not just because of the way the track flows, but the damn off tracks. They are not forgiving at this track at all. I mean, most of us know this. It's, I'd say the worst for it's probably turn 1. The bus stop chicane can be quite bad if you get ever so slightly out of line. Instant off track. Think there's one down at turn 8 as well, and turn 10 as well. It's difficult. This high-speed track, you've got to just fling the car in, hope for the best, use all of the track that you can, and, well, just hope that iRacing's being forgiving enough that it doesn't invalidate your lap. But they've got 4 laps, and a fairly lengthy one at that, about 1:40, just over like we were seeing in the practice sessions there. And honestly, not really sure who's going to take this one in either 3 of our classes. No one looked incredibly quick than the rest of their competitors, so this could potentially just be some drivers pushing it too hard, and getting those off tracks could give some other drivers an opportunity to start a lot higher than they probably should. And just on their out laps now, getting those tyres warmed up, getting ready for the 4 laps of onslaught that they've got ahead of them.
I think, honestly, Aaron, I have to say I'm with you in terms of trying to figure out who is going to do well in this race. It's about as hard as trying to find a living T-Rex, for the simple sake that usually in these qualifying sessions, it tends to go a lot different for these drivers than it does in the 45-minute long practice session that they had just a couple of moments ago. The only times in which we've really seen a little bit of a conversion between a driver showing leading pace in practice and pole position pace in qualifying is when it's pretty dominant, but we just didn't see that in any of the classes during that practice session that came to a close about a couple of minutes ago. So I think this qualifying session is definitely up in the air for these drivers, getting the first times on the board, currently on their first laps of this qualifying session. So we'll see who is going to get the first lap times on the board, who's going to be the bravest heading through this section. That right there is the inner loop, the bus stop chicane, whatever you want to call it. It basically goes by two different names. There'll be a lot of these corners go by a whole different bunch of names. But the bus stop chicane, that I think is probably going to be the trouble spot to end all trouble spots around this track, Aaron. I have covered many races in the past in which there's just been a major catastrophe heading through that section at the very beginning of this race. These drivers are fast, these drivers are very good, do not get me wrong, but with a massive pack of GT4 race cars, well over 40 and sometimes over 50 cars strong, heading through that section at the very beginning of this race. I don't know about you, Aaron, I just don't have a good feeling about it in either of the races that we have.
I'm very much going to agree with you there, but that's why I was hesitant to say that qualifying, the lap itself is very important, because of the nature of this track. It's very open for racing, kind of in any series that you do. And especially with no pit stops tonight, they've not got to worry about any of that. No worry about tyres or fuel or anything. They can just gun it for 30 minutes. And with the slipstream in these GT3 cars not being amazing, but that doesn't really matter here at Watkins Glen. It will just be a massive effect, pretty much no matter what you do. We're going to get some close racing tonight. I think in just everywhere you look. I pray for Josh trying to figure out where to put the cameras, to be honest. It's going to be, hopefully, a fight up at the front, in the middle of the pack, and some at the back as well. And that's just the nature of Watkins Glen. No matter what card you go, in a GTP, Formula 1 even, GT3, GT4, name it. Watkins Glen always just... It's an anomaly, I think, in iRacing's kind of rotations of tracks that we have. It's different here. You have to have a different mindset than you would at a lot of other tracks. It's not just, push and try and follow the car ahead. It's a lot more strategic. You've got to think about the slipstream. Think very, very carefully about where you're going to overtake, when you're going to overtake, as 30 minutes, realistically, the worst position you can be at the end of the race on that last lap is going to be in first, probably. If you've got a car right behind you, there's about a 70% chance you're not going to be the one in first by the end.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there, Aaron. To finish first you have to finish, but you have to get through turn one with as much speed as you possibly can, because from there all the way through to the inner loop, you are pretty much bending the floor pan in these race cars, trying to get as much speed as you can. It's going to be a glorified game of leapfrog, especially towards the end of these races. So chances are the person who's going to be taking the white flag may not come back to take the checkered. But one of the good things about the layout that we are running is that there are some decent overtaking opportunities that these drivers are going to look to try and capitalize on all throughout the total of 1 hour of racing action that we have coming up, split into two 30-minute long races. These drivers having to tackle the challenge right now of the qualifying session. 6 minutes on the clock of this 15-minute long session. Luke Lucchesi, who we're following right now, comes across the line. Looks like it's not an improvement from him to slip his way farther up the standings, which wouldn't be too far, as Ruben Behrens is the only car in front of him, currently on the pole at the moment in the elite category. But Lucchesi, the reigning two-time series champion from the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, looking to try and stake claim and prove to his teammate that, hey, you may have the advantage heading into the final few races of the season, but I've got the experience. And I think one thing as well with the RDSA team, it's not even a matter of, oh, it's just Lucchesi or oh, it's just Dana Brega. Both of them have been bit by the bullet, so to speak, in terms of these two 30-minute race rounds, where one of them just has an absolutely amazing first race and the other just completely lays an egg in the second one. So we're going to hope to try and see these two be a bit more consistent up towards the front. Usually it's been the case with Dana Brega, but last time out it was Lucchesi kind of getting struck by that falling anvil in race 2 at the Red Bull Ring just 1 week ago. So I'm curious as to whether or not that trend is going to continue. What do you think, Aaron?
It's difficult to tell because, I mean, Lucchesi and Dennebrega, I mean, we all know how good they are, how quick they are, and how fairly clean that both of them have been so far this season. They haven't really had a huge tangle with any driver, as far as I'm aware, so far this season, and they haven't actually crashed out of any races, so let's hope they can continue that streak going. But in the 30-minute races, they have just been a little bit vulnerable and just shown a bit of weakness here and there. And I don't know if it's the nature of the 30-minute races, that it's just more sprint formatted and maybe they're better long-term, better on tyres, better on fuel, which, to be fair, as a driver, is probably what you'd prefer to have. And who knows, we'll probably see them returning to form next week. But especially last week, I don't know, Dennebrega and Lucchesi, both in that second race, in the wet, just didn't look like themselves. They just lacked the pace, lacked the consistency. And especially Dennebrega in that second race at Austria, I think he really struggled for pace and grip in that McLaren. I don't know if it's a McLaren-specific thing where it just doesn't feel good in the rain. But he just looked so unconfident in that second race. He, I think, finished about 20 or 30 seconds off of the lead in the end, which we're not used to saying about Dennebrega unless something's happened to him. And of course, Lucchesi ended up finishing behind Dennebrega, but I think he did have a spin or an incident of his own anyway. So maybe it's the rain that just gave them a bit of a punch last week, or maybe it was just both 30-minute races just not going their way at all. But anyway, let's focus on the here and now. And, well, Lucchesi sitting in second at the moment, doing his flying laps right now. He's got one more after this, as Bearings is on his last lap, I believe, as he currently sits on provisional pole. And Bearings really does seem to be liking this Watkins Glen track so far. A couple of other drivers that I'm just keeping an eye on, Dennebrega and Otens, of course. Otens at the moment just gone up to 5th place, as he has finished his qualifying, as that's Alex Fretwell bottling the last corner, and that will be it for his qualifying session as well. He's currently in 15th and 3rd in the Premier class. A quick shout out to Break Bearings, who's currently 4th overall. And maybe Ruben and Brecht sharing some setups for today, as they look really quick.
I have a feeling, even if they aren't sharing the same setups, I think one thing that they are certainly sharing, well, is the car. You just look through the overall top 10 as it stands at the moment. The top 4 made up entirely of Porsches, and then you got 3 more towards the tail end of it. 7 of the top 10 cars being Porsches, and look at that, a nice save from Luke Van Gortel. That was well held, heading through the downhill corner of turn number 6. But still, I think these Porsches just absolutely adore this racetrack. That could be the reason why Brecht Bearings qualified, as it stands at the moment, on the premier pole. But he's currently slotted 4th overall, so this is a very impressive qualifying run for Brecht Bearings. I gotta say as well, this qualifying session has been I wouldn't say hard to keep tabs on. However, as we mentioned earlier on, the chances of the practice results converting over to the qualifying session usually a little bit low. It's not impossible, but it's usually not going to happen. And I think we're seeing that get put on full display just based off the fact that Ryan Odens in that 264 Alpha 1 Esports Ferrari, he set the fastest time in practice. He's currently slotted in 5th overall at this point. What in the world was that sound effect, Aaron?
Lucchesi, sorry. he just grabbed pole. That's my bad.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that sound effect. There you can see Lucchesi jumping up to the front. That sound effect was very disturbing. I think just about as disturbing as me eating that Post-it note a couple of weeks ago, but that's neither here nor there. Lucchesi jumping up to the pole in what I believe was his final qualifying lap, so well done from Luke Lucchesi to be able to jump into the provisional pole. Ruben Bearings still running in 2nd at the moment, but touching back on the point I was going to mention involving Odin, slotted in 5th. Right behind him in terms of that overall running order, and right behind him in the elite category as well, is Tristan Dennebrega, so well as teammate is the pole man at the moment in the Porsche. Looks like Dennebrega in that McLaren struggling a teeny tiny bit. I'm curious, despite the fact that I believe, don't have any chance of rain heading into this race, I have a feeling this track is just not very McLaren friendly.
No, and to be fair, the last few rounds that we've been to haven't really looked very McLaren friendly. It's just been Porsche, to be honest. Porsche after Porsche. And I can't remember one race where the Porsche wasn't the best car. And well, it just seems to be going that way for this entire season, as every other car just has some catching up to do. And the Porsche, to be fair, I'm surprised at how good it is at this track. It's, in my mind, it's not a track I'd expect it to be the best car, but I would expect it to be up there. But I mean, fair play. Clearly, the Porsche is just the car to choose for this iRacing season, and I think it's just the same in the officials. Everyone is using the Porsche, as every other car just is a bit, unfortunately. But that's the end of qualifying, and no cars left on track, and hopefully we can just skip to the race and we don't have to sit here twiddling our thumbs for another minute and a half. But anyway, it will be Lucchesi on pole position in the elite class, then Breck Bearings in 4th. That's going to be huge for his championship, as where's Matt Hoyland? He's all the way down in 17th, in 4th in the Premier class. And then it's Rolled Turf Crewer, who starts on pole for the Evos. So I think that's a first for him this season. And he's up there in 11th. So very good performance by the Dutchman.
I gotta say, a lot of drivers setting some pretty impressive performances. Rolled Turf Groyer, he was involved in a battle for the win a couple of races ago. I do not remember exactly which one it was. However, I do remember him leading in the Evo category at a very brief point in time. May have been Interlagos, if my memory serves me correctly, which, knowing past 20 years of, being sentient here on planet Earth, I can assure you it probably is failing me at this point, but he's been okay throughout this season. He's occasionally gotten a little bit dicey in these races. I have a feeling this may be a good opportunity for him. A lot of good opportunities for a lot of these drivers in this race. I feel like the one who's going to try and capitalize, at least for race 1, is probably going to be Brecht Bearings, starting from that premier pole, starting up towards the front as well. A reminder again to any folks who have not tuned into this series, for race 1, the top 12 finishers in race 1, that gets inverted and sets the starting grid for race 2. So I think at this point, Brecht Bearings, despite the fact that he's going to be in the midst of an absolute hornet's nest towards the beginning of this race, I have a feeling that he is going to try and capitalize from this race meeting here at the Glen. And if he can get a good first race result and Hoyland lays an egg, that may be his championship. That would be a very good result for him. But as you can see, the drivers lining up on the provisional starting grid, my apologies, about to get this pace lap underway. And speaking of the grid, let's take a look at Luke Lucchesi, going to be starting this race from the pole. Starting alongside him is going to be Ruben Bearings. Luke Van Gortel, off the back of a very impressive result 1 week ago at the Red Bull Ring, he's going to be starting this race in 3rd. Brecht Bearings, that driver running in the Premier category, very impressive in that qualifying session. We'll see if that impressive form can continue in time for the race. He's going to be starting in 4th. Right behind him is going to be a South African duo of Ryan Odins and Tristan Dennebrega. Andrew Fairley, the Brit, in the number 246 car, going to be starting this race in 7th. Luke King going to be starting in 8th. And rounding out your top 10 starters, we are going to have the duo of Jean Brainback, who got his first podium of the season 1 week ago at the Red Bull Ring. He's going to be starting in 9th next to Victor Van Ziest, rounding out your top 10. Rolled Turf Groyer, the Evo driver, going to be starting from the Evo pole, 11th overall. Daniel Lee, who's been very impressive all throughout this season, but has run into a little bit of a slump. He's going to be starting in 13th. Stefano Gattuso, who already has a victory this season at Interlagos a couple of weeks ago, he is going to be starting this race in lucky number P13 overall. Tom Weston, the Brit, going to start alongside Ashley Brooks, who is looking to try and turn his season around. He's going to be the 2nd starting Evo driver, but he really wants to be the first Evo driver when the checkered flag comes out, because that's really what he needs to do at this point in the season. Alex Fretwell, the Brit, in the 152 car, going to start alongside him in P16. And then looking through the rest of the drivers that we have inside of this massive grid that we have from this race, rounding out your top 22, going to be Matt Hoyland in 17th, Stephen Donnelly in P18, Chris Jennings in 19th, John Ludbrook in 20th, Hussein Serka Slesser, I probably butchered that pronunciation, I deeply and wholeheartedly apologize for that. The driver of the 108 car going to be starting in 21st, and Joe Glass going to round out your top 22.
And then the rest of your grid, Scott Kostrick in 23rd, Jeffrey Darman down there in 24th place, and then in 25th is going to be Francois Brandet. Not an ideal qualifying for him at all, being a little bit further down than where he'd ought to be. Malcolm Coates, the sole Corvette in this entire lobby, in 26th place. Joe Preston 27th, Spara 28th, Vandermeer 29th, Darren Sharples in 30th. That's a really awful qualifying session for him. Thomas Pugh in 31st, Nick Stube in 32nd, in 33rd, Robin Aston 34th, James Allworth, Noel Brown is in 35th, Bostock 36th, Martin Cock in 37th, Robbie McKee in 38th, Collar in 39th, Chris Keenan in 40th place, and then your final few drivers, James Pallow, Danny Weir, Sean Clark, and Paul Collishaw.
44 cars. Honestly, Aaron, I feel like we need a little bit of a raise just based off having to go through 44 starters on these pace laps, because it's one great thing about this series that I've absolutely adored all throughout it. The massive pack of cars that we have week in and week out. And it's at the smallest of racetracks, too. I mean, Watkins Glen, despite the fact that this lad we're running on is 3.45 miles long, maybe it's just me being familiar with this track, but it certainly doesn't feel like it's that long, and you're spending a lot of time flat out, but with 44 race cars around this racetrack, I feel like it creates some very cramped conditions. So if we do have some lap traffic that some of the drivers may have to deal with towards the end of this first of two 30-minute long races, that's certainly going to throw a big wrench in the works. It's a slightly jumbled up starting grid. The Porsche's looking fast, occupying both of the front two rows. However, you've got the non-Porsche battalion of Ryan Odins and Trishan Dennett Brega starting in P5 and P6. I think it's fair to say, Aaron, that this race is really going to be the Porsches versus everybody else.
Yeah, there's no real other way of putting it. To be honest, the Porsche just looks quick, powerful on the straights, good at high speed, and insane out of the traction zone. So there's no beating it, to be honest, and it's kind of worrying what Porsche have done to that car, or how much money they've slipped into iRacing's back pocket this season to promote their 911 GT3 car. I don't know, but it does just look the bee's knees this season, and no other car really has come close to its consistency, its stability as well. That's the thing. We see a bunch of drivers making mistakes and spinning, and more often than not, it's not a Porsche, considering half the lobby is in Porsches, I believe, maybe even more. So, well, that just goes to show how just dominant it's been so far this season. And, well, is it going to be the same today? It looks like it, but we've got 30 minutes to find out.
Will the Porsche dominance continue here at the Glen? Only time will tell, but nevertheless, about to brace ourselves for what's going to be a really thrilling day of racing action. Waiting for the green flag to come out. A little bit of confusion in previous weeks about the starting procedure, but nevertheless, the green flag's out and the drivers are on their way, and that is a flyer from Luke Lucchesi. He's going to be leading them into turn number one, comfortably so as well. Ruben Beringslot in second, Luke Van Gortel in third. Looking at the rest of the field still side by side, coming out of turn number one through the S is the first time by. This is such an inviting opportunity, especially towards the beginning of the race, to go side by side, but a little bit of contact can snowball into a major amount of drama. But riding on board a little bit farther in the mid-pack, the car we're riding on board with is Joe Spara in the 131 BMW, the premier driver, trying to get very dicey at this early point of the race. Already made up 2 spots, but looking at the field heading through the bus stop the first time by, even tempting fate with some side-by-side action a little bit farther in the midfield. You can see that close quarter stuff heading through the corner.
Well, from everyone, it's been a very clean start so far. There's been not one spinner so far, which is very impressive from a 44 car field. That is very, very good. So round of applause to everyone for making it through cleanly. Can we get through the entire lap cleanly? Let's wait and find out. As that was a McLaren looking for an optimistic move there into the toe at turn 7. But like you said at the start, Lucchesi had an amazing launch and just caught everyone napping. As there's a send for a McLaren further back. That's Joe Glass going for a near spin. Just about managed to keep it on thanks to the barrier. And oh no, that's a biggie. And thank God the barrier was there. Otherwise, that would have been even bigger. That's one of the McLarens. I think that's Thomas Pugh. And he's got huge amounts of damage. Oh, that's one of the most bent suspensions I've ever seen in my entire life. And Thomas Pugh is out of this one, surely. There's no fixing that car and getting it back out in time. I don't even think he'll be able to make it back to the pits as Andrew Fairley goes wheel to wheel with Brayton back there through turns 1, now into turn 2 and 3. And Andrew Fairley seems to have gotten the position, but doesn't really have a toe in front of him. So Brayton back has the chance to fight back here. Fairley's probably going to defend the inside for the bus stop, and he does choose so. As Brayton back, the outside line's a bit risky and does choose life over death into that chicane, and will just sit in 8th for the time being. And a bit of a shaky start for most of it. Oh, that's a big one. That's Joe Sparrow straight into the wall, and that's another car there. That's a McLaren of Nick Stube, who went slamming into the BMW. That was a hefty impact for Joe Sparrow. Got to be thankful we're on a sim and not in real life, otherwise that would have been pretty worrying.
And that right there, Aaron, is the trouble of running through the bus stop. A small little nick of the curb that doesn't upset... small little nick of the curb that upsets your car, you're just going to be in for a world of pain. And we just saw that get put on full display a matter of a couple of moments ago. They'll be riding on board with the 131 car of Joe Sparrow. Heading through the section, you can see the McLarens going side by side, right in front. Hit that curb, got him up into the air, and you can see this impact gets T-boned yet again. That was a hellacious impact. I'm not sure who that was in the McLaren that came barreling in. Maybe had a very similar off-track excursion to what Sparrow had, hitting that curb, heading through the bus stop chicane, getting unsettled, and just taking a one-way trip into the right side of Joe Sparrow's BMW. Taking a look at another angle of this time a little bit overhead. You can see that hard impact into the outside wall, and then bang, comes along that McLaren. That is race-ending damage for the both of them, a race-ending collision for sure. First incident we've really seen heading through the bus stop, though, Aaron. I have a feeling it may not be the last, as it may have been Nick Stuve riding on board with him right now in the 169 car. Oh, tough stuff for Stuve.
Yeah, just wrong place, wrong time, and that's just what happens sometimes. As not really his fault. That wasn't Sparrow's fault, you know. He was completely out of control going into the barrier. I don't think holding his brakes would have done much there at all, so... Yeah, it's very unlucky. Yeah, exactly. It's very, very unfortunate for Nick Stube. And yeah, like you said, that's definitely not going to be the last incident we're going to see going through the bus stop, as it is just the death chicane. I know there's a chicane literally called the death chicane in Gran Turismo, but this is as close as we can get in real life, as you were talking about the curbs. Yep. I mean, these cars, it's probably the best for... Actually, I would not wish driving through that bus stop in a GTP on my worst enemy. I tried it many seasons ago and hated it. You literally, there is one very specific line through the bus stop in a GTP, and if you get it slightly wrong, you're done. You're in the wall. There's no, you can't do anything. You're just out. Like, there's nothing you can do. And I don't know how realistic it is, and I think some people have complained about the bus stop to iRacing, saying it's a bit mad that you can't really go through it cleanly. But iRacing clearly disagreeing, and thinking that it's perfectly fine as is. As well, I mean, other 42 drivers have managed to take it 4 times now without crashing. So maybe iRacing's onto something as we go through it once again. As that's fighting in the background. I think that's Daniel Lee trying to go for some overtaking, but around the outside, not going to work at the bus stop, I'm afraid. I don't think the bus stop is wide enough for well, 1.5 cars, let alone 2. As well, if you go from side by side through there, you're either going 50 miles an hour or you're both sideways, as Lee really piling on the pressure. I believe this is Victor Van Zies, my apologies, who's currently in front of him, and really piling on the pressure for the Premier driver, who's currently in second, which would usually be a good thing. But Breck Behrens is having such a good performance as always, shoving him onto the grass as Daniel Lee activating four-wheel drive in that Mercedes and making his way through.
Holy cow, Danny Lee playing with fire, but the fight is still not over. Side by side, heading into turn number 9. Is Danny Lee going to get this move done on Victor Van Zies? Yes, he does, but that was a fight of titans heading down into turn number 8. I'm not sure what went through Daniel Lee's mind to think, yes, I'm going to run off into the dirt to try and get that move done. I mean, it's got a big splitter, so I guess he may be thinking that Mercedes can work very good as a lawnmower. Certainly Valtteri Bottas joking about that years ago in Formula 1. We're going to take a look at a replay of this, and the absolute cojones on Daniel Lee to go for this move. You can see Victor Van Zies was trying to cover that inside line, and Danny Lee was like, nope, I am going to go on that inside whether you want me to or not. That is the fantastic position to be in, heading downhill off into heel of turn number 8. Danny Lee putting his car exactly where he needed to get that move done, as we're now seeing a fight involving Stefano Gattuso and Van Zies heading through the bus stop chicane. Looks like they're going to single file out, but looking a little bit right behind Stefano Gattuso, to be a bit more precise. Got Tom Weston right there in the 201 Porsche. He may get involved in this fight too.
Something I've just noticed is, especially in the Premier and Evo class, it always seems like there's always one driver who's just a lot higher than they should be, and it just seems to happen every week. There's always a 5 or 6 second gap between first and second, and well, today's no different. Turf Crewer, nearly 6 seconds ahead of Brooks, and Breck Behrens about the same ahead of Victor Van Zies, so it doesn't look like we're going to have too much fighting in the Premier or Evo classes for the lead, but luckily the Elite class seems to be a little bit more hot on its heels than the rest of them, as Lucchesi just slowly starting to be caught back up by Ruben Behrens, who set the fastest lap of the race on the last lap. Was about a 10th quicker than Lucchesi. No doubt probably be helped by the slipstream that he's receiving just a tiny bit. On that previous lap though, Ruben Behrens was a 10th slower than Lucchesi, so just seems like they're going to be trading lap times at the moment, and well, can Van Gortel maybe get past, and potentially can he put on the pressure, as of course after his first race win of the season at Austria, he's looking very, very racy, got the momentum, and it looks like there Ruben Behrens has a slight bit of damage to the rear of his Porsche, but how significant is that actually? Sometimes cars in iRacing can look a lot worse than they actually are, and is that affecting his downforce slightly? And more importantly, where on earth would he have gotten that damage from?
I have a feeling it had to be on lap 1, because we haven't seen him go off the circuit and like back it into a barrier of any kind, but it must be slowing him up quite a lot. Even though this racetrack is one where you've got 11 corners to deal with, and all of them have this huge amount of challenge to them, small little bit of an incident can just end in absolute disaster, and you can have small little bit of aero damage. And in these sports cars, have a small little tweak to your aerodynamics, and it'll just drag you down like you're carrying a parachute on the back of your race car, heading through some of the flat-out sections, mainly heading down into that bus stop chicane. That can be a big bugbear for some of these drivers, and I have a feeling that's going to be what decides that fight for the overall leads. We're looking at a fight with these drivers. Stefano Gattuso nearly getting a bump from Tom Weston. Those two drivers trading blows heading through turns 8 and 9. They're going to be side by side, nearly heading off into 10. Tom Weston trading blows like it's going out of style.
Yeah, he really was looking for that move up the inside, but this track's just too high speed to really shove your nose up the inside of someone. And his best opportunity is just to sit back in that slipstream and wait for an opportunity, as Gattuso does not look entirely comfortable in that Ferrari at the moment. And Tom Weston definitely piling on the pressure. Looks to be quite good in the middle sector, as there's a bit of a kerfuffle here. Exiting turn 1, got a huge chunk of cars all piled up on one another, and I believe they're all fighting in the Evo class, but they've got Joe Glass, who we saw have a near fatal crash on the first lap. Oh, speaking of, there was a spinner there in the background into turn 4. I'm not sure who that was. It looked like a Lamborghini going for a drift through turn 4. I'm trying to find out. It might have been Joe Pallo, I think. James Pallo, my apologies. And, oh no, it might have been Paul Collishaw, who's the Lamborghini behind him, who looked like he just was drifting his way through turn 4. And, oh my, what on earth was that? As Noel Brown is right in the middle of the track, and hopefully everyone can avoid him. And everyone does so. Very, very good avoidance from everyone there. But I'm lost. I don't know if anyone else saw that as well, but that was... It looked like he just purposely spun on a straight. I'm not sure if I'm tweaking. Oh, no, okay, he did get on the grass. Okay, fair enough. That's unlucky.
Oh, and this is terrifying. You can see Rob and Noel Brown stop there on track, driving off into the grass and nearly hitting the barrier. That's a better option than just staying out there on the racetrack of those two Porsches that we just saw right there at the end of that replay. If they were still side by side when Rob and Noel Brown was still stopped there in the middle of the road, that would have been a disaster. But you can see that 22 car driving like an absolute hoopty rod, understeering, coming out of turn number 9 and hitting the barrier. A little bit of damage on that race car. Would not be too shocked if Rob and Noel Brown decides to come down pit lane to repair the damage on that race car. But this kind of speaks to the season that Rob and Noel Brown has had. It was starting off so well, really overshadowed by the dominance that we saw early on in the season in the Evo category from Ashley Brooks. But after those first 3 races, he has just hit an absolute wall. Very thankful, I'm sure, that he didn't get hit by any competitors, but still, that was a hair-raising moment. And speaking of a hair-raising moment, a near disaster involving Scott Kostrick, who we're riding on board with, actually Rob and Noel Brown's teammate, running in a McLaren, but you can see him nearly coming to blows just a couple of moments ago. That was the number 28 Porsche of Francois Brandet that he nearly came to blows with. Brandet, we haven't really talked about him at all throughout this broadcast thus far, outside of him leading in the Evo Championship. He's currently running behind Ashley Brooks, so Francois Brandet may be running into a little bit of a pace issue here at Watkins Glen, which would be a bit surprising, considering that he is one of those drivers in that Porsche, which seems to be so quick here.
Yeah, I think I briefly mentioned him during qualifying, and that he didn't seem to have that much pace at all. Here's Alex Fretwell. That's a McLaren that got very lucky. iRacing's netcode giving that green McLaren a lifeline. I'm not sure who that was. I think that might have been Ashley Brooks, who he made contact with, but iRacing didn't detect the contact for Ashley Brooks and got away with murder there. And he should be thanking his lucky stars, if he's watching this broadcast back, that didn't end in disaster, because if that had happened, well, he would have been out of this race most likely. As here's Van der Meer getting a bit tail happy on the exit of turn 7. And yeah, well held. Lost a few positions though, but is better than losing all positions. So good held. No, good held. That's not English. As Joe Glass getting extremely close to his fellow compatriots in front of him, his fellow McLeans that he's fighting for. I believe it's Kostrick in front of him right now that he's struggling to fight with. I think something's happened to Darren Sharples as he's towed all the way back to the pits. And Van der Meer's missing the entirety of the front of his Ferrari. I'm not quite sure how it's still going, as surely there's some important bits in the front of that Ferrari, like radiators, some brake fluid or something. He should not be able to drive right now, but clearly he's still going, still chugging along, and Darren Sharples has already, oh my god, that is huge amounts of damage there. And a good thing for him to pull off of the track and safely go back to the pits. I think that's a smart choice for Darren Sharples. And well, something's clearly happened between himself and Van der Meer at some point. I'm guessing so, as they're both missing the front of their car. I'm guessing they both probably spun each other, hit the barriers, I'm not sure. But Vandermeer just chugging his way along back to the pits, I can imagine. If he doesn't come into the pits, then I don't even know, as he is losing a lot of time. I can imagine that car being nigh on uncontrollable. As yes, he does pull off into the pits. Very smart thinking there from Vandermeer. And probably won't see him for the rest of the race. Here's Ashley Brooks being followed by the big boy, the BMW GT3 M4. As that's a spin. Is that Gattuso? Oh, that's big.
Yes, it is, and that's Hoyland involved.
There. Oh, no.
Hoyland getting a piece of that incident with Gattuso right as we cut to that camera shot. Stefano Gattuso having a major sideways snap heading through the bus stop, spins him around in that 239 Ferrari. You can see him hits the curb, hits the wall. That was a huge impact there, and you can see nowhere to go is Hoyland. Small little clip, but that is going to be enough to twist some front suspension components. That is going to be a game changer for both those drivers. I believe Hoyland is already towed back to pit lane. Trying to look through, I believe he has. I think I just saw that car down in pit lane. Take a look at another incident. This one involving Scott Kostrick in the Kaizen GP2 101 McLaren. You can see him going side by side with another McLaren and a huge hit into the outside tire barrier. A clumsy collision heading through turn number 7. Slightly upended by the major incident we just saw a couple of moments ago involving Gattuso. So we take a look at another replay of this.
Yeah, we took another replay of this, and for all you keen-eyed viewers, you would have seen Matt Hoyland on the side of the track. As, yeah, that was a bit of an awkward one. I think Kostrick kind of drifted out to the left of the track there, and just, I don't know, it was iRacing glue once again. You know, the rear bumper and front bumper of someone comes together, and there's no real saving that one. Here's a replay of what happened to Matt Hoyland. We briefly saw this, and slows right down, and just very unpredictable car behavior. And yeah, you can see the front right tire there's completely detached from the suspension. And I imagine he tries to turn left here, but the car doesn't. And yeah, I was correct. And he went straight into the wall. And unfortunately for Matt Hoyland, he's completely out of it. And that is going to sting very, very much for his hopes in that championship fight. But judging by the way his results have gone this season, he'll end up winning race 2.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't rule it out, Aaron. I mean, he's going to be starting a little bit farther in the back, so he certainly has a big mountain to climb in that 30-minute long race that we have coming in the not-too-distant future here from this race. But, I mean, you can't necessarily rule it out, and as you said, with a little bit of luck on his side and with how things have gone for him thus far this season, one of his competitors will be struck by a falling anvil, but I just feel like there's absolutely no stopping Brecht Bearings unless Brecht Bearings stops himself. We'll just have to wait and see. Self-inflicted incidents have taken some drivers have very good spots in these races thus far this season. We may see a little bit of deja vu of that here at the Glen today, but Brecht Bearings running very good in this race. Ruben Bearings running good as well. However, the fight is going on right behind him. You can see Luc Van Gortel going side by side with the championship leader of Denna Brega, sweeping around the outside into the bus stop, but they come to blows through the corner. Denna Brega is off the track. He's hit the barrier. That is an off-track moment that the championship leader did not want to have, trying to make some inroads on his teammate who's locked steady in a close and very hotly contested championship fight with. Denna Brega went for a hot move, but then in the heat of the battle, contact is made and Denna Brega gets spun around. Now surrounded with some competitors that he hasn't been around at all throughout this race. Some tire smoke, and it's probably his own tears as well.
Yeah, the weird thing is he got the move done, and then Van Gortel just runs into the back of him. And I don't know how much damage Denna Brega will have from that. Luckily, it was fairly low speed. I mean, look at this. He gets ahead, and then Van Gortel just taps him up the rear. So that will be a slam dunk penalty for Van Gortel, who I was going to mention, by the way, has had a poor few laps as he was fighting for seconds at one point, and then just dropped back a few seconds and is really struggling. And, well, he's struggling even more now. but Dennebrega, that's going to be a huge blow to his points tally for this race, at least. But of course, for the second race, it won't be too bad because he'll be starting, I believe, in 4th if he finishes where he is currently. But it's all about the damage for him. How much does he have? Can he get to the end? Or will he just drop like a fly from the rest of the field? And will it be over for this race at least? And Lucchesi's going to be laughing all the way to the bank. Just a huge amount of points swinging his way. And, well, he was 15 points behind. It doesn't look like he's going to stay that way for very long.
But the main thing that Luke Lucchesi needs to keep his eyes on for, not only just bringing this car to the checkered flag, he's still got about 8 minutes out there at the moment, so he still needs to keep it going in a straight line, make it to the checkered flag before he thinks about race 2. But when it comes to race 2, trying to have a calm, cool, and collected head on your shoulders to cut through the field and overtake some drivers that you usually wouldn't be battling with, Lucchesi just needs to have a good second race. Doesn't need to be a race win, but it cannot be a just absolutely dreadful run, much like the one he had in race 2 at the Red Bull Ring just 1 week ago here from the ESR GT3 Championship. Lucchesi has been given, I wouldn't say a lifeline, more so a shot. This is what he has been given with the issues involving his teammate of Dennebrega. Dennebrega, as you just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Aaron, he is going to be starting this race in 4th if everything stays the same in the final, I guess now it'd be 7.5 minutes left to go in this race. My math skills always tend to fail me at the worst time imaginable. But at this point, Luke Lucchesi, what he needs to do is just keep that car going in a straight line, make it to the checkered flag, and then for race 2, what he really needs to do is just not get involved in anyone else's mess.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's just going to be mind games now for the second race between Lucchesi and Dennebrega. As well, if it does finish like this, it will be Lucchesi starting in 12th, sorry, and Dennebrega starting in 4th. So Dennebrega usually struggles in that second race, trying to come back through the field. Well, he's only got 3 cars that will be starting ahead of him. And those 3 cars will be Daniel Lee, Turf Kruger, and Victor Van Ziest. All cars which you definitely say he's quicker than, as Martin Koch gets an overtake there as these two go side by side. That was very, very lucky and very, very close, and they should be very well counting their lucky stars that they managed to get through turn 3 and 4 without losing each other into the wall, as Dennis Koller got very close to Martin Koch there. And oh god, that I genuinely thought that was about to fly into the wall, and somehow it didn't. iRacing today is being very forgiving with some of the netcode and some of the contacts, and well, in other cases iRacing is also not being very forgiving with the curbs at the bus stop today. It's claimed, I think, about what, 4 or 5 people now, and I imagine that tally will continue to go up over the course of this race and the second race that we've got, as Martin Koch choosing to go for an optimistic move, and also Robin Aston choosing to go for an even more optimistic move on James Horworth in that BMW in front, but luckily everyone kept it in a straight line. And Robin Aston and Martin Koch look very racy in these final few laps. They this is when drivers tend to get impatient. These last 5 laps, they've not got long left, and they just think, oh, I need to make my moves now. And a lot of the time, that's when drivers can start getting a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the races where these drivers have those small little mistakes which may not seem like much on the surface of it all, but losing out on some time, losing out on a little bit of mental confidence, especially around a racetrack like this, where a driver's confidence has to be as high as possible for them to even have a hope of making it around the racetrack at some decent level of speed. So coming into the final 5 minutes of this race, I'm curious as to whether or not these drivers are going to be thinking, hey, we're coming to the end of the race, I may as well go for it. Or if they are going to exercise a little bit of patience with their competitors, it's a track where we've seen some small little mistakes snowball into some major collisions. And you brought up a very good point a couple of moments ago, Aaron, in reference to the curbs around this racetrack, mainly heading through the inner loop, and I think it's mainly a product of where this racetrack is. Of course, up there in upstate New York, getting a pizza shipment from down in New York City, leave that in the fridge for about 24 hours, and then you have the material that they make the curbs out of with this racetrack, because those things are damn near indestructible, and the curbs have destroyed more race cars than the race cars have destroyed the curbs, even though most of these drivers have been eating those curbs like it's cereal for breakfast. Lots of food analogies going on during this broadcast, but one driver who's certainly eating them up, continuing on with the food analogies, is Luke Lucchesi, currently leading over Ruben Behrings by 3.3 seconds. Lucchesi at this point, he has not put a foot wrong all day. Knowing my luck though, I probably just shanks him, but that Porsche of his just looks to be on rails.
He actually does. He's been insane in this first race. He just keeps pulling away inexplicably from the rest of the field when in the practice sessions and also in qualifying. He didn't look too much quicker than the rest of the field. He only got pole by about half a tenth, so it's quite shocking that he's managed to just pull away from everyone else, as our only Corvette in the entire lobby, Malcolm Coates, has decided he's had enough and is out. So I'm not quite sure what's happened to him, if it was an incident or something. No, never mind. For some reason it told me that he was completely out, but no, he was just in the pits. And maybe fuel or something, maybe a bit of damage there for Malcolm Coates. My guess is fuel, because apparently there was no record of an incident with Malcolm Coates, so what's an idiot? Getting the fuel wrong in 30 minutes. Well done, Malcolm. you silly man. The only Corvette in the entire lobby, not doing the big boy, the V8, any justice there. As I can't imagine why not that many people would be using the Corvette, to be honest. I've not heard anyone really complain about it, so, but then again, maybe because no one's complaining about it because no one's using it, not sure. But either way, he's trumbling along in that Corvette. A very short pit stop, so it was probably fuel, probably missed it by a lap or something. Unlucky for Malcolm, as Robin Aston also coming into the pits, as he's got a lot of damage on his McLaren, so something's happened to him, as a Ferrari on the left there farted. Yeah, as he just exploded. As James Horworth, we were watching this battle a few laps ago, and I imagine that, oh, that's a carbon copy of what we saw. Oh, that's a huge one.
Yeah, that's 4 cars involved in all of that. Horworth having a huge collision. That was a big one heading through turn number 7. It's the second incident like that we've seen thus far. Robin Aston, you can see him in that 125 King GP2 McLaren. That thing is absolutely destroyed. Ready for the scrap heap is that McLaren. One car that doesn't seem to be ready for the scrap heap is Dennis Kohler, who's now trundling down pit lane, running 10th in the Premier category as it stands at the moment. But that was a big collision with a lot of racers. That's the first pileup that we've seen thus far here at the Glen Air, and I think we're going to take a look at a replay to see another angle of this very odd and goofy looking accident heading through turn number 7. Let's take a look at it here. That's Horworth carrying a lot of speed through the corner, and there you could see that McLaren on the outside of him staying really tight. Joe Sparra certainly was very happy that he was on the other side of the racetrack when that happened. There you can see Joe Preston, his perspective in the JSD DXT racing car. Lots of acronyms, I guess it would be. Not sure the grouping of the letters for Joe Preston, but the grouping of the letters for him getting involved in this collision was SOL. Stuff out of luck, and you can see that McLaren just coming out of the blue and him having nowhere to go, nowhere to glow, and nowhere to grow in the slightest. He was going through the grass, but the grass was eating his car alive after a big collision. Heading through turn number 7, he's rejoined the racetrack, but with that crash, that's going to take him out of contention big time. Ruben Behrings, though, is in the lead this race. What has happened to Luke Lucchesi? Luke Lucchesi was dominant in this race, but Ruben Behrings is now leading it. Where is Lucchesi? He's 10.5 seconds back of the leader, now leader of the race, of Behrings. got distracted with those collisions. Luke Lucchesi may have gone off the circuit, riding on board with it, hanging through turn number 7. It's a spin. You can see the sideways snap, and he overcorrects it into the outside barrier, noses it in, and Luke Lucchesi. You can see he got. That was a very odd rejoin for Luke Lucchesi. That may have been Brecht Bearings that picked up a piece of that. So as much as Brecht Bearings got hit by the silver bullet there, it looks like his brother Ruben Bearings is going to be the one to capitalize all of that. They're heading through the final corners right now, and Ruben Bearings is on track for a very unlikely victory. We didn't have this on our bigger cards. However, he may have a fight between himself and Odin's. Looking at these two coming to the line. It looks like it's going to be Bearings, but Odin's had a fantastic run, coming to take that checkered flag about a tenth of a second between those two. Brecht Bearings wins it in the Premier category and finishes that race 3rd overall. Brilliant stuff from Brecht Bearings, but Luke Lucchesi, my God, that was the goof up to end all goof ups.
Well, he had an opportunity to gain a huge amount of points in the championship, and he only finished 2 places ahead of his teammate in that race, and that was a very silly mistake and very uncharacteristic from Luke Lucchesi as well. I'm genuinely shocked by that. I'm not gonna lie, and it's just wow. Yeah, that's something we've not seen at all from Lucchesi at all this season. Under no pressure, he was about 4 seconds ahead of Bearings, I think, at the time, and just completely bottled it into the wall, and has finished in 6th overall. And 2 places ahead of Denner Brega, so they're still going to be starting fairly close to one another. Wow, that's just... I'm almost speechless. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, Bearings, well, both Bearings, 1st and 3rd. Has that ever happened? The 2 drivers related finishing on the same podium on Apex? I'm not sure, but it's happened today. And Brecht Bearings has outclassed the rest of the Premier field, as the closest driver to him was Victor Van Ziest, who finished 8 places behind him. Just wow, that was a very weird race, and race 2 is probably going to be even weirder.
Yeah, I have a feeling that race 2, especially with that incident for Lucchesi, it is going to be a battle of attrition, I have a feeling, just based off some of the incidents that we saw during that first race. Maybe a battle of attrition. It's going to be a battle of wits for some of these drivers. Who is going to have the smarts to try and stay out of trouble? Who's going to be the one that gets caught up in the red mist and gets struck by a falling anvil in the process? We'll just have to wait and see how things go in this race, of course, being broadcasted on Apex Racing TV. Remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. The racing action from race 1 was incredibly intense from start to finish. Race leaders battling it, drivers coming to blows, but an overall brilliant race. And we'll briefly run through those results. I think we'll just touch on the top 20 and graze through the rest of the field. These results are always some of the hardest to go through, just for the simple sake that they are oh so long. I remember one of the first broadcasts I ever did here on Apex Racing TV. It was a race with about 55 cars in it, and just seeing a grid of race cars that big, it both made my computer nearly go into low Earth orbit / explode, and it also nearly blew my mind. But still, the field absolutely massive in these races. The race is incredible to watch, and race 1 was no exception. We'll touch on those results here in just a couple of moments' time, while we're in the midst of this warm-up session with the drivers hitting the racetrack right now. Currently following the driver of the McLaren, that is Chris Keenan. Very similar looking paint scheme to the one of Ashley Brooks, but the Belgian in the number 76 car going for a slight spin through turn number 9. I should have these corner numbers memorized, but I do not. I feel like I need to work on that as the resident American here on these broadcasts. But I think we'll touch on the results now and go through the top 20 from what was a very exciting day. Half a day, shall we say, of racing action here from the ESR GT3 Championship at Watkins Glen. Race 1 was incredibly exciting. Race 2 set to be an even more exciting and thrilling fight. And there we go. Those are the results. Had a little spritz of WD-40 to get the graphics up. And here they are. Ruben Behrings wins it. Ryan Odens in P2. Those two were content with the podium spot. They end up with the victory and second place. However, that is going to come back to bite them on the butt a little bit, considering that we do have that top 12 invert to talk about for this second race. Brecht Behrings wins it in the premier category, trying to stake his claim on that championship in the number 190 car, finishing third overall. A very impressive result for the Belgian. Luke King going to finish right behind in fourth. Andrew Fairley finishes in fifth. Luke Lucchesi, a heartbreaker towards the end of this race, going to finish down in sixth, where it looked like he was set for a surefire victory. John Brainback, who's had a pretty odd season to say the very least, only has one podium, that coming 1 week ago. Outside of that, hasn't finished in the top 5 since. Brainback is finishing this race in 7th. Tristan Denabrega with that incident finishing in 8th. Daniel Lee in 9th. Royal Turfgroyer wins it in the Evo category, finishing in 10th overall. Running out your top 12 and completing the front row for this second race is going to be Victor Van Ziest and Luc Van Gortel. So Van Gortel, who was incredibly intriguing to follow at the Red Bull Ring 1 week ago, going to be on that reverse grid pole. That is going to be a storyline that we keep our eyes on for sure. Ashley Brooks, Alex Fretwell, Stephen Donnelly, Chris Jennings, Joe Glass, Francois Brendette, Jean Ludbrook, and Chris Keenan rounding out your top 20 in the first race. And as we'll just scroll through the rest of the results from that first race, I have to ask you this, Aaron. With Luc Van Gortel starting this second race from the pole, do you think he's going to bring in a performance like we saw at the Red Bull Ring? And is he actually going to be able to stay up towards the front?
No.
Checkmate. Thank you very much, Aaron. It's
You're welcome.
Very colorful. Very colorful. I appreciate that response.
No, but
it's a good point to raise, though. I mean, he's got a lot of drivers that are going to be looking to try and grab that P1 spot.
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I think the first 15 minutes of that race one, I would say yes, but then those last 15 minutes, he just completely melted down. So it's a tough call. I think if he can just keep his composure, maybe manage the tyres a little bit better, because maybe that's what he was struggling with towards the end, he might be able to, as he's got a little buffer, a few cars in between himself and some real competitive drivers. I mean, Denabrega probably is the driver who has the best chance of winning this race, to be honest. So that's who I'd put my money on. I think Van Gortel might be able to do it, but he does just need to just be a bit more consistent.
Yeah, whether or not he remains up towards the front or whether or not the dream of winning the second race is pretty much just a snowball chance in hell, we'll have to wait and see how things are going to shake out for him. But a lot of drivers certainly chomping at the bit to try and grab the victory from the second race here at the Glen. Luc Van Gortel going to be starting it from the pole. Victor Van Ziest going to join him on the front row. Royal Turfgroyer going to complete a front three comprising of all three of the different classes that we have from this series. Really nice to see something like that. I think that's the first time we've had something like that happen thus far this season. But he's going to be starting in third from the Evo pole. Daniel Lee, who's been very impressive to follow all throughout this season, was a hard charger in race one. He's going to be starting this second race from the fourth position. Starting right behind them in the fifth spot is going to be the elite driver and championship leader in the elite category of Tristan Denabrega. He's going to be starting in fifth. John Brainback in sixth. Luke Lucchesi in seventh. Looking to be on the comeback tour, and with an incident like that, you can really tell that Denabrega is starting to rattle his cage a little bit. So we'll have to see if Luke Lucchesi is going to be able to put that by the wayside and be able to get a good result out of the second race here today. Andrew Fairley, the Brit, going to be starting this race in 8th, and rounding out your top 10 is going to be Luke King and Brecht Behrings. Looking through the final drivers inside the top 12, the ones that finished P1 and P2, we have Ryan Odens and Ruben Behrings. Ashley Brooks going to be the second starter in the Evo category, 13th overall, so a lot of ground to make up for him in both the championship fight and this race fight as well. Alex Fretwell going to start alongside on that 7th row. Stephen Donnelly, the Irishman, in 15th. Chris Jennings in 16th. And then looking through the rest of the drivers that we have inside the top 22, we have Joe Glass in 17th, Francois Brendette in P18, John Ludbrook in 19th, Chris Keenan in 20th, Hussein Serica Slesser starting this race in 21st, and Martin Koch going to be starting in 22nd.
Robin Noel Brown will be in 23rd place, Sean Clark in 24th, 25th, Rob McKee, James Pallow 26th, James Bostock in 27th, Malcolm Coates in 28th, Dennis Collar in 29th, Jeffrey Darman 30th place, Weir in 31st, and a little bit quick there, but I think it's Joe Sparrow in 32nd there.
That WD-40 kicks in
33rd.
too hard at times.
Yeah, it's just too slippery. Paul Cotterschlaw in 33rd. Gattuso down in 34th. Thomas Pugh in 35th. Stube 36th. Preston 37th. Robin Aston 38th. James Hallworth in 39th. Weston 40th. And then you'll find a few drivers off Matt Hoyland, Scott Koscheck, Darren Sharples, and Van der Meer in 44th and last.
There we go, 44 cars, and we're able to get through all of them as most of the field was heading through the outer loop of turn number 5. This is a view from turn 6, and that boot section caught out a whole lot of drivers, whether it be incidents coming out of the Town Hill left-hander of turn 6, or whether it be the corner of toe, turn number 7, where we saw multiple multi-car collisions heading through it. That boot section seems to be the one that's nipping a lot of these drivers on the butt, or kicking them a little bit in the butt. I mean, it is the boot, and they name it after that for a very good reason. It can kick you on the high end harder than anything else. But I'm curious, Aaron, as to whether or not these drivers are going to take this race a little bit easier than they did the first.
I doubt it. They're racing drivers, sim racing drivers more specifically. They don't do sensible. They don't do easy. And it's a 30-minute race. They've... See, this is the trap that most drivers fall into. They have a bad race and they think, right, I need to push as hard and as aggressive as I can to make up the difference. And that could work, and it could also make it much worse. So, well, let's find out which one it's going to be for about half the grid who didn't have the best of races, some of which were championship contenders. And, I mean, Matt Hoyland, Lucchesi, couple of others as well, having big incidents, big names that we're so often seeing with consistency and performance, bottling it here at Watkins Glen.
All right, to get things up and rolling for this second race, whether we see some bottle jobs remains to be determined. We saw a very confused start. We've seen many confused starts all throughout this season. A lot of contention when it comes to this starting procedure, but nevertheless, the green flag is out. The drivers are on their way. A much more even keel start between both of our front row sitters. The leading heading down into turn number 1 is going to be that, I believe, was the leader of Luke Van Gortel. Look at some very close quarters action a little bit farther in the back. Andrew Fairley, we're following him right now in the Lamborghini. He's running in the 8th position as it stands at the moment. Most of the top 12 remaining unchanged, but they're starting a battle heading down the back flat out blast through the S's into the inner loop for the first time. You can see these drivers dicing. They're scrapping with each other, trying to find any way in the book to get some moves done. Trish and Detta Brega, who are riding on board with the championship leader coming into this round at Watkins Glen in that McLaren, got struck by a falling anvil, but his teammate got struck with one as well. He wants to stake his claim on the championship as much as his teammate is a 2-time reigning champion. Detta Brega has come to fight, trying to get moved on Danny Lee heading downhill into turn number 6. Some side-by-side action a little bit farther in the mid-pack with Francois Brendette. The Evo championship leader starting to feel really racy, but Detta Brega in the midst of a hornet's nest right now. He's got Danny Lee, Jean Brainback, his teammate Luke Lucchesi, and Brainback going side-by-side on corner exit heading down into turn number 8 in just a couple of moments time. Looks like they're going to single file out as it stands at the moment, but the fight very much on between Detta Brega and Lucchesi. This is not just for teammate bragging rights, that's for the championship as well.
Well, will they get aggressive with one another for entertainment purposes? I hope they do. And if they come together, well, that's going to be absolute cinema. I'm not enticing anything, but it might be funny slightly. Let's hope they can keep it clean, though, as it's been a bit of a shaky start for a lot of our drivers. I think Van Gortel off the line didn't quite get the jump he wanted, as he was very close into turn 1. We go with Luke King as he spins round Andrew Fairley
that's a
hard
big
into
hit.
the barriers. and that has ripped off the engine cover of a Lamborghini. And
Oh, this is sketchy.
I think... Oh, he's towed back to the pits. God. Good for him. I think he was just about in an okay spot, but I mean, if anyone went wide, it would have been over for Andrew Fairley. But it looks like to be over for him anyway, as Luke King, again, iRacing glue, you get stuck together, and there's nothing you can do. As that's a puff of smoke, as that's two cars
a big crash
going off. Yep, that's 2 cars into the bus stop. One of them being Sarek de Slesser. That is... yeah, that's Sarek de Slesser there. And I think I saw another car or 2 as well involved in that. They might have towed back, I'm not sure. But a very scrappy opening few laps here. As I've just realised, Van Gortel somehow already has a 2.2 second lead. I've no idea how that's happened. But there is a lot going on track right now, and Josh is struggling to keep up. I don't blame him. I would be absolutely useless in this situation. You kind of need 5 different POVs of battles everywhere. It is intense in these opening few laps. Drivers seeing the red mist, getting aggressive, getting dicey, and well, some of them getting too dicey. And we've already lost 4 drivers in these opening 2 laps. As we're about to lose another one. That's good too. So again,
coming out of turn 9, that bottleneck with the run under the racetrack to get out of the infield. It bottlenecks, and you have some stuff like that can happen. We just saw that get put on full display a couple of moments ago. It has been a hectic start to this race. Lots of incidents. Our producer's PC is about to burst into flames, and our live timing tower is essentially having a panic attack. But take a look at this collision. That was a big hit for Fairley coming out of turn number 1. Small little contact sends him into the barrier. It was a matter of feet separating he and some cars. I say feet. It's like 1.5 feet. It's like 18 inches between not getting T-boned and just having an absolute hellacious collision coming out of turn number 1. Taking a look at this incident heading into the bus stop, and a little bit of contact sends Serica Delesser around. That was a big hit into the inside Armco barrier heading into the corner, broke a little bit and creates a big amount of drama between those two. Not sure who that was. It may have been Thomas Pugh, the McLaren, who gave the punt to Hussein there heading down into the corner. But nevertheless, those two having a scrappy incident heading down into the bus stop. This has been a scrappy start to the race. I think you put it perfectly, Aaron. This has been a start to the race that a lot of these drivers certainly did not have in mind, breaking out the elbows and breaking out the chrome horn in all the wrong ways.
Well, and also in doing so, they're breaking their own cars, as Thomas Pugh completely loses the front of his McLaren there, as Thomas has not had a good day here at Watkins Glen, as has about half the field. They've really struggled here, which I must say is a bit surprising. I thought it would have been a lot cleaner than this, but yeah, what am I expecting coming from Watkins Glen? We get one more replay from Gattuso. I'm surprised he didn't rip off the front of his bumper with this incident, to be honest, as I think it was a tap from behind. It was. And straight into the wall he went, and he's very lucky to get away with minimal damage. It doesn't really look like any damage on that Ferrari, and if that's the case, he's very lucky. He tries to defend, and the Porsche behind completely runs into the back of him, and maybe a bit of awareness there from the car behind. Not quite sure who was the Porsche that was sitting behind him, but yeah, Gattuso, 2 similar incidents in this race, and he's just falling more and more down the order, and his Ferrari mechanics have been working overtime, as they've had to repair that car about 3 or 4 times at this point. But now with another car. I think that was Rob McKee who went for a little bit of lawn mowing there on the exit of turn 6. And everyone is struggling with this one. And when I say everyone, I genuinely mean everyone. I don't think anyone today has gotten away without one incident. Everyone is struggling for their lives.
Yeah, I think we're struggling for our lives just trying to keep track of all this drama that we've had in the early stages of this race. Gotta say, as we're taking a look at a replay of Joe Sparra going off the track, a hellacious collision for him. Deja vu to what happened earlier. Another bad curb whack heading through the inner loop. Let's take a look at that hump on the inside. Hit that and bang into the tire barrier. That takes Joe Sparra out of this race. He has had a brutal season thus far. We're over halfway through, but the premier driver who entered this race as the reigning champion in class, you could call it the filled-in snake pit at the zoo. He has not had a pit to hiss in all throughout this season. It's been tough and scrappy, and he's had those incidents happen all throughout this season. Hoping just to try and have a clean day of racing action, but sadly he's not going to get it here at the Glen. Looking at that though, Cirque de Slesser hitting the barrier, heading through the S's, going over top of the hill, down through turn number 3 and 4. He made a little bit of wall contact, but he's going to hold off onto that spot. Looking at this absolute pandemonium, though, McKee, Chris Keenan, who are following right now, and the pack catching up, involving Matt Hoyland, running in the 8th position in the Premier category at this point in time. Keenan, you see him going side by side, heading downhill into turn number 6. The start of this race has just been absolutely absurd. I gotta say, a driver who's had some terrible luck thus far is Brecht Behrings. He's not leading in the Premier category as Victor Van Zies has gone by him. The same can't be said about Roel Turfgroyer in the Evo category. He's still leading in the class. However, feeling a lot of pressure from Denna Brega trying to get by him. Denna Brega running 3rd in Elite. Turfroyer not really involved in the Evo Championship fight. However, he's looking to get a good result out of this race here at the Glen, running 5th overall, but he has got a hard charger right behind him. Denna Brega, my apologies, is actually running 5th overall. Turfroyer running 4th overall with 2 of the RDSA esports teammates and the 2 drivers battling for the Elite Class Championship. Just a huge amount of pressure that the driver of the number 20 Evo car is having to deal with at this point.
Well, he's got a choice to make. If he just lets all of these cars go and lets them fight, or does he defend this 4th place and just keeps a hold of it? And I don't know how much beneficially he'll get from that, but he's choosing at the moment to defend these places, and never mind, he's let Denna Brega through, and up into 4th place goes the South African as he begins his charge for the 3 cars that lay in front of him. 5 seconds off the lead already for Denna Brega. I mean, I said before this race that Van Gortel needs to put his foot down and be more consistent. Well, looks like he's listened to me, as there goes Lucchesi now on Turf Crew as well, and I think Turf Crew is taking my advice and just letting everyone go fairly easily, as he really doesn't need to fight for any of these positions. It won't really gain him that much long term, as he's got a huge gap to Ashley Brooks, so he can just take this one easy, get the Evo race win, and that's not what you want to be doing, driving into the side of, I think that was Brecht Behrings. Well, oh, it was Ruben. I mean, they have the same livery, they have the same name. Yeah, very easily confused, but yeah, Turf Crew just didn't see Behrings there, I don't think.
Yeah, that looked like a clumsy, but at the end of the day, unintentional, small little bit of a hip check heading down into turn number 9. That's such a hard corner to try and get right, but these drivers are still going to risk and go side by side. As an off-track moment for Chris Jennings in the Axis Sim Sports Porsche, he's going off the circuit. You can see a little bit of damage on the front end of that number 122 car. He's now mowing through the grass, trying to stay out of everyone's hair, heading through the final corner, so may have to take a look at a replay to see what went wrong between those 2 drivers. Looking at a side-by-side fight, though, that is involving Roy Turfgroyer and Ruben Behrings. Looks like those 2 drivers going to single fly out, heading down into the bus stop with Behrings, running in the 6th position. Oh boy, my pronunciations are all out of whack today. Running in the 6th position in the Elite category as it stands overall, running 7th. And with that pronunciation joke out of the way, I completely forgot what I was going to segue to next. So Aaron, I'll pass it off to you at a risk of embarrassing myself even more.
Fair enough. Respect the hustle as Chris Jennings goes for a cheeky spin. Coming on the exit of turn 10. Not actually seen too many incidents through here. as rejoining the track in an interesting way. It is admittedly quite a difficult track to rejoin due to just how high speed it is. But still, you got to have your wits about you and make sure you don't slam into anyone, as this is Daniel Lee right on the back of Turf Crewer, as I'm somewhat confused. No, Victor Van Ziest, I was going to say. These people have such similar liveries, it's so annoying. But it's Victor Van Ziest who they're stuck behind.
Some nice looking
apologies.
liveries, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're bad looking liveries, but Victor Van Ziest and Turf Crew have the same livery, so it's just ever so slightly confusing to keep up with everyone. But Victor Van Ziest just about holding on to second, but I have the feeling it won't be for much longer, as here comes the big, massive, chunky V8 of the Mercedes pulling alongside, as Van Ziest tried to hold on to it and didn't manage to do so successfully, but he damn well gave it a go and made life difficult for Daniel Lee, and looks like he's going to be making life difficult for the cars behind as well. So everyone's going to have to be a little bit careful trying to overtake Victor Van Ziest, as he's looking awfully racy, as this was not as easy as overtaking Turf Crew was earlier on.
Yeah, taking a look at this replay of the side-by-side fight heading down into the bus stop. Daniel Lee sweeping around the outside, going to get the move done successfully. The driver running second at the moment in the elite category. He's been a driver who's been oh so impressive ever since he joined this series at the Barcelona race about a month ago now. But Daniel Lee has been brilliant to follow all throughout this season, and showing why he's been a driver that we've kept tabs on as an incident hang down into turn number 9. That was contact for sure, and you can see more contact there. That may have been Turf Groyer, the Evo leader, making contact with the outside barrier coming out of the corner. That looked like a very clumsy collision. Luke King getting a piece of that, I believe. You have to take a look at a replay to see what exactly went wrong. Heading down into turn number 9. It's not the first incident we've seen hang down into that corner. Not the last either. Damn. You can actually see it was Ryan Odens, I believe, in the Ferrari that made that bit of contact. And there you can see understeering off the track is Royal Turf Groyer in that MJK Sim Racing blue entry. His teammate Victor Van Ziest running into some difficulties as well, but nevertheless looked like a small little bit of contact. We're going to take a look at another angle of this. Following King's perspective in that Ferrari, yeah, that was just, I think you put it right there, Aaron. That was a move that was never going to work. Yeah,
that was Otens, as Van Ziest has just had another issue. As you can see there, it's all really getting away from him now. And this is why I said he should have just let those cars through, as it would have just made his life easier. And I guess it would have been difficult, as he couldn't have let all of them through, as the man he's fighting for the lead, Brecht Bearing, was up there as well. But here's what happened this time round, as I think that's Ashley Brooks there, who just swiped across him. And, well, going side by side into the bus stop, that can happen very easily. It's very, very narrow. There's only one line through there. So, yeah, not surprising that contact happened there, but Ryan Otens got to feel a little bit silly for going for a bit of a dive there on Victor, as, yeah, that's what I mean. It's so difficult to leave each other room on the entry to that corner, as it's so narrow at this high speed. An inevitable contact there, and Victor Van Ziest has fallen all the way down to 5th place now in the Premier class. And I don't imagine we'll be seeing too much of him for the rest of the race.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we will not. That's such a heartbreaker as well. He was running so strong in that Premier category, leading it over Brecht Bearings, who's now inherited the lead as a result of that drama. It is so tough. I mean, these races, they can swing either way. They can swing in whatever direction the racing gods wanted to swing in, and sadly, just going to end up falling apart, really, for Victor Van Ziest. And really, that first incident, just nothing he could have done differently there, getting caught out by an overly opportunistic move hang down into turn number 9, and after a small low incident, things just start to fall apart. I feel like there may have been a spinner heading through the bus stop just a couple of moments ago. I heard a the upsetting roar of some tires screeching. I think they may have gone away with that fairly scot-free. Certainly heard a driver mega sideways. I think there may have been some cheeks clenched, to say the very least, heading through the bus stop chicane a couple of moments ago. That is such a hard section of racetrack. You got to go into it with full commitment and a lot of bravery, as well as there may have been an incident hang through turn number 7. That's Francois Brendet. You can see him in the number 28 car. That's John Ludbrooks, the two drivers running 3rd and 4th in the Evo category. Coming up blows hang down into turn number 7, and Aaron, we're going to find a replay to see what happened between these two.
Well, here's from Francois' perspective, and he just runs into the back of that Lamborghini and then crashes into Ludbrook. So, yeah, nothing really Ludbrook could have done to avoid that. I don't know who the Lamborghini was in front that he ran into the back of. But here's Ludbrook, and yeah, not really anywhere he could have gone there. Probably a little bit of damage to both cars there. Wasn't too high speed, so I think they'll get away with it. As that's Matt Hoyland looking at the cars ahead, as he's now right behind Van Ziest. And well, I jokingly said that Matt Hoyland probably is going to win this race, but I mean, he might get into the top 5 at least, which is very, very impressive in of itself. And we've still got 12 minutes to go, so anything can happen. He's currently up 23 places, so he's really on a mission. Semi-bump drafting Van Ziest there, as Victor's gone very hairy into the bus stop, but actually went through there fairly well. And now it's Matt Hoyland's turn. Turf Kruger. Is it Turf Kruger? Oh no, Turf Kruger's had an incident. As that's your, well, was race leader in the Evo class. It's happening to everyone. What on earth is happening to our drivers today? They're all just having an awful time here at Watkins Glen. And that looks to be, it might have happened on the exit of turn 5. I'm going to guess it was probably contact with someone else. As doing your own mistake through here is actually surprisingly difficult. As he looks a little bit hairy. Oh no, it was all by himself. Yeah, it looks like he already had some damage.
Yeah, that car was already wounded, certainly is mega wounded as a result of that collision. I'm curious, Josh, you could possibly take a look at another angle of that incident. Tom hit the yellow barrels of doom, which if anyone has ever hit that in iRacing, they're basically made out of the matter of white dwarf stars, so that could be the reason why this number 20 MJK Sim Racing Blue Porsche has been absolutely destroyed into the barrels, and that just stops him on a dime. The rear end of that race car was tweaked to high hell, and as a result of that, he's now towed back to pit lane. Actually, no, he hasn't. He's still out there on the racetrack, crabbing for sure. You could see that car is sideways, heading down through in a straight line. So it's another driver getting struck by a falling anvil. I'm not sure what is. I feel like Amazon's delivery drones have been really letting these drivers down.
Well, I mean... What interesting way to describe it, but I really don't know why people have been struggling so bad here at Watkins Glen. And I mean, it's not even just the bus stop, it's just everywhere that people are struggling. And it's a bit shocking, to be fair. It's entertaining, of course, but for these drivers it's frustrating. And as a driver myself, I can understand, as this is Lucchesi trying to make his way past Daniel Lee, who's done a fantastic job in that hunk of junk of a Mercedes to keep a hold of Lucchesi, but no longer, as he goes up into 3rd, and Daniel, not really much he could have done there. As much as he likes to use this Mercedes and get the most out of it, he is kind of getting the most out of it. I don't think there's much pace left in that thing. You don't see too many people using it very often. And I'm upsetting every single Mercedes fan in the world right now, so let's just move on. As never mind, hello, going for a move, and contact!
Lucchesi spun around, try and keep these cars going in a straight line. Daniel Lee back up and rolling. Oh, and that was a bad rejoin from Luke Lucchesi. I'm not sure who that was. That may have been Ashley Brooks, the leader in the Evo category. And look at that. That is terrifying from Lucchesi. Some 3-wide action with Alex Fredwell in that Lamborghini, splitting the difference, lock steady in a very close fight. They come to blows. That's a horrible collision. Lucchesi involved in that. Lucchesi getting a piece of that incident. Joe Glass with a big crash. Heading through turn number 4, Lucchesi is done. That car is destroyed. And Luke Lucchesi, he was running so good in this race. I was just going to mention that it was going to be essentially no harm, no foul between those two. And in the span of 4 corners, you're exactly right, Aaron. Things have completely fallen apart for Luke Lucchesi. Tristan Dennebrega looking back on this season, looking back on this round, that may be what decides it. That was a game changer for this season.
Yeah, that genuinely could be it for Lucchesi. That's how big of a mistake that is. He will be, well, in last pretty much, as he's towed all the way back. I'm speechless once again. This series, I mean, in fairness, I have no idea what Daniel Lee was doing, but to be fair, he got very alongside there, so I don't know how much you can blame that on Daniel Lee. I mean, it was not a move I would have gone for if I was in Daniel's perspective. He's quite far back, but here we go. He makes it to the apex, completely side by side, and maybe Lucchesi just broke really early and wasn't expecting Daniel to go for that. I don't know. Maybe Daniel just broke where he normally would, wasn't expecting it. I mean, if this race was a transcript, it literally would have been Lucchesi up to 3rd into turn 1. He's crashed twice in the space of 4 corners and is out of the race. Like, I don't understand how his luck has changed so rapidly. That is the most heartbreaking, depressing 4 corners for a championship rival I've ever seen in my entire life. This is the first one, of course. I mean, I think the stewards... Yeah, I think the stewards will probably put the blame on Daniel there, as it was kind of optimistic, but he was alongside, so I'm not so sure. And then, what on earth happened up here? It was between the Lamborghini and the McLaren of Joe Glass, and we have seen this incident not just today, it just happens all across motorsport. Too close for comfort, and Joe Glass straight into Lucchesi, and I think at this point, I don't even know if he had that much damage. I just think he's... When that happens, it's just so mentally just like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So I don't blame Lucchesi at all. And it really has gone awfully for Lucchesi. I mean, we thought he was bad for Dennebrega when he had his incident in the first race. But after Lucchesi's, self-spin from first place, it's just not gone right for him ever since, and that could be the swing that puts Dennebrega in the firm place to win this championship. I genuinely think he's probably already got one hand on it. Unless something insane happens in this race or over the next 4, that could be it. It just might.
Well, we got 5 more races to decide it. 4 30-minute long races and 1 more hour long. That coming at Fuji in 1 week's time. But gotta say, I think I'm with you there, Aaron. That may end up being Luke Lucchesi's 3rd championship win in a row from this season. Just spiraling down the drain. And there was nothing he could have done to avoid that. He just, wrong place, wrong time in more ways than one. That spin heading through turn number 1, that incident with himself and Danny Lee, who didn't even start off this season in this series. He was a late entry into this season. But that collision between those two, that may end up deciding it. And that was just about the most dramatic way in which a championship could be decided. We still got 5 races left to go. We still got a lot of racing action to tread through here today. But that is a heartbreaker for Luke Lucchesi. There really are no words to describe that. If he didn't have bad luck, he would have no luck at all. There's only one way that he can put that. In all of this, it has been a complete role reversal for a lot of drivers throughout this field. It is looking like absolute serenity for Tristan Dennebrega. What could have been a really tough go of things here at the Glen. He's on track to finish 2nd, while his teammate and main championship rival is on track to finish well down in 12th. And there's no coming back from this. There is no positions to be gained unless a driver gets struck by a falling anvil a little bit farther up the road. So that's game, set, match in terms of where Luke Lucchesi is going to finish in this race. Joe Glass still down pit lane. He was the one that hit the barrier and kicked off all of that, the final nail in the coffin. And you could see another big crash heading down into the bus stop chicane. Jeffrey Dahman in that DDK by Eagle Speed Academy car. He goes off the circuit in a dramatic fashion at one of the fastest points of the racetrack. Lots of these drivers have been breaking the elbows out in all the wrong ways. We have had numerous collisions thus far. These drivers have been throwing caution to the wind here at Watkins Glen. Aaron, we are expecting these drivers to be a bit more aggressive heading into this race. I don't think we were expecting it to be really that prevalent.
Which I don't even think it's just, I mean, well, no. I was about to say it's not really drivers being aggressive, but it kind of is. But it's about 50-50. I just think people have really struggled to get to grips with this track properly in these cars. And also a mix of people being really aggressive. By the way, I don't know if anyone saw or mentioned, Daniel Lee into the pits. I'm not sure what's happened to him. He's just stopped. It doesn't say he's actually in, like, taking a pit stop, weirdly. We have, at least on my screen anyway, there's no record of him actually being in his pit box. It says though he was in the, yeah, exactly, for 0 seconds. Not sure if that's just a bug or what, but I mean, clearly he's come in for a reason. I would guess a penalty, probably, considering how long he was in there. I don't know though. That's weird. A lot of weird things have happened today, and that's just another one. I don't know what's happened here at Watkins Glen. I don't even think Watkins Glen knows what Watkins Glen has happened. But it's a good thing we've only got 1 minute and 15 seconds left of this race, and hopefully not too much more. Oh no, never mind.
Yep, there we go. Yep, oh, and more contact being made. That, I think, was Stefano Gattuso just got T-boned in that collision with himself and Martin Koch. Oh, God. That has to be like the 4th or 5th incident for Stefano Gattuso thus far in this race meeting. There you can see that 239 ADX Racing Esports Ferrari now towing back to pit lane. I mean, as much as a lot of the field has been struck by falling anvils, he's going to have so many dents on his head, I think a blind person's going to start reading his skull. So that was just such a big collision a couple of moments ago. You could see, I just heard it. I could hear the tires screeching in agony heading into the corner. Here's a replay of it. Martin Koch going for the move. You could see contact being made, and Stefano Gattuso coming into the scene of the accident. Small little clip. I genuinely don't, I am at a loss for words, Aaron. I don't know how else to describe the racing that we've seen thus far. It's just been a total reversal of everything that we kind of expect from this series. In terms of the championship fights as well, it has been a huge twist in momentum for the RDSA esports drivers. Dena Brega now going to be smelling like a rose. Lucchesi, meanwhile, going to be smelling like a bucket of horse manure. And that's just the story of Elite. Premier looks like Brecht Bearings is going to be able to stake his claim on that championship lead, as he's currently leading over Alex Fretwell, 14.5 seconds between those two drivers, with Hoyland having a very good recovery drive, do not get me wrong, but that is still going to be a big swing of momentum for Brecht Bearings, the championship leader in the Premier category coming into this race. Looks like he's going to stake his claim on that championship even more. The Evo category, meanwhile, Ashley Brooks looking to be on track to return to victory lane. Francois Brandet running into some pace difficulties here at the Glen. He's going to be very happy, though, that he's going to be leaving this race for what is set to be a second place run, which was probably a lot better than he had in mind considering the pace he showed in qualifying and the race earlier on. It's just been a total reversal of everything that we usually expect from this series, and a total reversal of fortune for our race leader of Luke Van Gortel. He had a rough start to this season, grabbed his first victory of the season 1 week ago at race 2 at the Red Bull Ring. Here, stateside, running in the USA, running at the Glen. looks like Luke Van Gortel is going to be the master of these second races, because for 2 weeks in a row, Luke Van Gortel is going to come across the start-finish line and win it here from the ESR GT3 Championship. Luke Van Gortel victorious overall, victorious in the elite category, and you have to go back to this man, Tristan Denabrega, 7.5 seconds between those two, and everything is said and done, but Denabrega going to stake his claim on that lead in the elite standings. His teammate Luke Lucchesi, he is going to have to do some sulking in the bathroom sink after this race, and I can't necessarily blame the man. Ashley Brooks maybe going to be doing some donuts in the not-too-distant future after winning it in the Evo category. Quite a big gap between himself and Francois Brandet in the process, about 22 seconds between those two drivers. And Brecht Bearings, who I just mentioned not terribly long ago, going to help his standings out a lot in the Premier category. He ends up winning it in the Premier class, so the DDK by Eagle Speed Academy number 190 car. He's been fast thus far this season. He's been consistent as well, and looking to try and stake his claim on that championship. But Aaron, we were expecting the second race here at the Glen to be chaotic. We were expecting some of these drivers to break out that chrome horn, beat each other with each other's elbows. We weren't expecting that, though. We weren't expecting Luke Lucchesi to get struck by a falling anvil and have a heavy collision heading through the S's onto the back straightaway. We weren't expecting him to get struck by the falling anvil. We weren't expecting to see a lot of the drama that we saw, not just in that second race, but the first race as well. It was a day full of twists and turns, shocks and surprises. I think Luke Van Gortel is going to be very happy the fact he backs that car into victory lane, but the big winner from this race may end up being Tristan Denabrega.
I've never been more thankful for a race to be over in my entire life. Like, not that it was boring, because it definitely wasn't. It was just, I don't even know. I've never been so confused, lost, watching / commentating over a race in my entire life. That was just, yeah. I feel so bad for the stewards after this race. They have got pages of incidents to go through, and I do not envy them at all, and I hope they're being paid well for their time, because if they're not, my god, they are just labor, just free labor, and they're being worked like slaves, quite frankly. But wow, just wow, that was an incredible race, and like you said, Denabrega is going to be laughing all the way to the bank as a huge chunk of points has just swung in his favor. And Ashley Brooks, you mentioned, getting back on top of it, finishing in 7th. Very good drive from him. And we're going to take a look at just some of the incidents that happened in that race. As you're seeing on your screens now, it was just utter chaos from the moment we set off, and never really stopped until the checkered flag. And incident after incident after incident, and no one got a break today. I think the drivers, more than us probably, will be even more grateful that this one is done.
I have a feeling that you're exactly right with that point, Aaron. These drivers were feeling the burn. We kind of talked about the pressure that these drivers were going to be feeling heading into the second race, and I think in high-pressure situations like this, that's part of the reason why these drivers were seemingly seeing red from start to finish and basically out for blood from start to finish from both of the races that we had here today. As we take a look at some more of these replays of a very hectic second race, chock full of incidents, I think we will briefly touch on the results and then move into some driver interviews with a driver who is certainly very happy about how things have gone here at the Glen for him. Ruben Bearing is going to win it when everything is said, and actually that's race 1. My apologies there. Here's race 2. Luke Van Gortel ends up winning it. Tristan Denabrega going to finish 7.5 seconds back in P2. Ryan Odens, the South African, going to round out your podium in 3rd. Ruben Bearings and Brecht Bearings going to finish 4th and 5th, so the brothers running in the Elite and Premier category respectively, putting on some very good shows with Brecht Bearings certainly staking his claim on that Premier Class Championship, finishing this race in 5th. A very impressive series of performances here at Watkins Glen. Luke King finishes in 7th, Ashley Brooks in 7th, wins it in the Evo category. Alex Fretwell finishes this race in 8th. Paul Collishaw who I gotta say was a driver who I don't think we talked about at all throughout the race. He ended up gaining 24 spots when everything is said and done, slightly usurped by Matt Hoyland, who finishes right behind in 10th, who made up 31 positions from start to finish. These drivers cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter. Jean Brainback finishes in 11th, Francois Brandette in 12th, Stephen Donnelly in 13th, Dennis Kohler in P14, Darren Sharples running at your top 15. That's Rob McKee, John Ludbrook, Nick Stube, James Pallow, and Chris Keenan running at your top 20. And I want to briefly run through the final results that we have, just because I want to see where Luke Lucchesi, the reigning two-time series champion, finishes this race. It's a bad result in the elite category. It's a bad result, period. And for Lucchesi, it may be a game changer for him. So he didn't finish inside the top 30. He finished in 34th, folks. So Luke Lucchesi, he is going to... I can't even say he's going to be kicking himself, because he just got kicked by the bad guides of luck all throughout this race. And I was going to segue this to you, Aaron, because we did have Tristan Denabrega waiting in the interview waiting area, but he has abandoned us. So I guess we'll say, I mean, he's hopefully going to be happy with how everything went. Granted, his teammate got struck by more falling anvils than you've ever seen in your life, but he's going to be the one that capitalizes from this race here at Watkins Glen and heading into the final 1 hour race of the season, where he seems to do very well at Fuji in just 1 week's time. I think Denabrega has that momentum on his back.
Yeah, definitely. And he had a bit of a tricky race 1, but that race 2, if only he just could have matched the pace of Van Gortel, it could have been even better. But he has been gifted today, and he should be praying that the rest of this season goes well. Because honestly, if he just, finishes on the podium pretty much every race now, it could be game over. And especially if he wins next week's race, and Lucchesi has a bit of an iffy race. Double points for the 1 hour races, of course. If he wins that one, it could be over. The gap will probably be, I'd say, 40, 50 points in that case. And that will take something very, very drastic to change anything for Lucchesi.
Well, heading into today's racing action, Aaron, the gap between those two was 15 points. I have a feeling that has probably swayed well above 35, because that was, in terms of disasters, that was about as disastrous as things could have gone for Luke Lucchesi. It was a very chaotic day of racing action here, and... Okay, Aaron, so I will go back to what I was going to say earlier. Denabrega, certainly a very happy man when everything is said and done. He's actually joining us now, again, in the interview waiting area. So, Aaron, would you like to have a chat with a man who, despite not grabbing the victory, is probably happier than anyone else up and down the grid?
No.
Oh, Aaron, do we,
Hold on.
Did we lose you there for a second, or was that just a slight little croak there from your microphone?
Don't know what happened there, but either way, I'll drag him up. And we've got Denabrega here talking with us. And Tristan, mix of emotions. I think all three of us here in the commentary booth don't even really know what just happened. But at the end of it all, you've somehow managed to extend your championship lead, and by quite a lot now. Tell us how you're feeling.
Evening, gents. How's everyone doing?
We're okay for now. Honestly, it was so difficult to keep up with everything, but yeah, I just want to hear from you on both races. Like, how did it feel for you?
Mixed emotions. Came into this round knowing that the car driver combination just wasn't strong here, and as you saw in qualifying, I was just nowhere. Really struggling with this car at this track for some reason. Just lots of understeer, not able to hook up a lap. So yeah, we qualied P6, and obviously Luke, my teammate, did an amazing job and got pole and was flying. So yeah, as you saw in race 1, it looked like it was his for the taking, and then yeah, unfortunately he just had that driving error 2 laps from the end and lost it all on his own. So that obviously brought us back into the picture, because I mean, if he had gone and won that, we were down in P6, so it would have been a big gain for him. And I think he then ended up just finishing, I think, 1 or 2 positions ahead of me. So that helped quite a bit. And then, yeah, the reverse race started ahead of him. And then target was just to try and get through the other class drivers in front of us, which proved to be quite difficult. And then, yeah, we had a nice little fight with Daniel and managed to get past him. And then, yeah, unfortunately, Luke and Daniel had it coming together there in turn 1, which, yeah, allowed me to basically solidify that P2, and yeah, unfortunately for Luke, put him out of contention for the race. So again, mixed emotions, because probably at Luke's strongest track of the season, where he should have maximized points on me, I've come away with gaining points on him, which is just weird. Unfortunately for the team as well, not a great night at all for the team's championship, because we are still leading that, but I think we would have taken a big knock tonight. So yeah, overall bittersweet. Obviously happy in my side of the camp, but yeah, not happy for my teammates, and obviously for the team overall, not great.
Yeah, I guess from a team's perspective, it is a little bit frustrating, and I can imagine that Luke is probably not willing to be very chatty right now, and is probably hiding in a corner, to be quite frank. After that race, it really did go wrong for him so quickly. But at least looking forward, we're coming towards the end of the season. We've got the last 1 hour race at Fuji in 1 week's time. Is that something that you're looking forward to, or do you think it might be a little bit of a struggle?
It's funny enough, one of the rounds I circled on the calendar when I first chose the car, and I think it's going to play to the strengths of the car. I haven't driven the car yet on that circuit, but I think with that super long straight and the layout of the circuit, I think the car should be good. We've seen over our races over the course of the season that the McLaren is really strong. So if I can qualify well, I think we'll be in the mix. And then, yeah, with the points we gained today, we just got to keep it clean, especially with it's 1 hour left and then 2 sprint races. I think, or there might be even another one. Yeah, there's Fuji, then there's sprint at Sebring, and then there's sprint at Laguna. So there's actually still quite a bit to happen. So yeah, at the moment, just take the points we can get, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens, and hopefully it will be just as entertaining as the rest of the season has been. And well, thank you for your time, Tristan. Always a pleasure having you here in the commentary booth. And before you let you go, anyone you want to give a mention or shout out to? Yeah,
just to RDSA Esports, obviously. All our real drivers that we run, we're actually an esports team, but run a real racing team as well. So all our real world drivers that tune in to watch, thank you. To our families that support, to all the sponsors, RDSA, Racing Spirit, Spirit Invest, Ravenol, SimGrid. Yeah, we really appreciate all their support. And yeah, we enjoying the season and looking forward to the next one. Yeah, Luke's the reigning champion at the moment, but like again, tonight was a bit of a tough one for him. He's got 2 championships in the bag. I've got 1, so let's see. Maybe we can beat 2-2 by the end of the season.
Well, that would be very interesting indeed. Well, it's been a pleasure, Tristan, and although being a difficult round for you, it's actually ended up being a big swing for your championship hopes. So good luck for the remaining rounds, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
Cool, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you for the broadcasts every week, and we appreciate you guys.
Thank you for the kind words.
And that right there was Tristan Denabrega, a very complimentary man. Thank you very much, Tristan, for those very nice comments at the end of that interview. We're definitely running long for sure after that slight delay in all of that. But Aaron, got one more 1 hour race to look forward to at Fuji in 1 week's time. If Watkins Glen was anything to go off of, if all the races we've had thus far this season are anything to go off of, it's going to be quite hectic, especially considering it's a final of those 1 hour races with double points on offer and some drivers looking to try and make some inroads in the championship. What are your thoughts heading into that race, if you do have any? I'm kind of scatterbrained from this race, let alone next week.
Yeah, I am as well, to be fair. I think I've mentioned this before. I like Fuji. I think it will be a good spectacle. I thought today would be a good spectacle, but this was just, yeah, so something else, to be honest. We get a bit of strategy next week, very different mentality going into Fuji. Hopefully, I think a lot of drivers probably just need a few days to just calm down And hopefully with the 1 hour race, people will be a little bit more sensible.
Fingers crossed that these drivers don't get caught up in the red mist as much as they did here at Watkins Glen, because that was quite crazy, to say the very least. It was hard to keep track of, but still fantastically exciting and very entertaining to follow as well. It's a story of this entire season. We're slowly bringing this season to a close. We got some awesome championship fights to decide, some winners to crown as well. It is going to be a fantastic next few weeks coming up here on Apex Racing TV for not just this series, but all the other action that we have going on coming up later on today. Here in the States, I'll actually be clicking over to tomorrow for anyone in Europe is round number 4 of the DRICCA Sim Racing Series. That'll be some Formula 4 action at this very racetrack of Watkins Glen. And we also got some Radical SR10 action at Watkins Glen. You want to break up the Watkins Glen action, you're in the mood for some multi-class sports car racing action with the season finale of the European Sports Car Championship, 4.5 hours of coverage here on Apex Racing TV. That will be at Portimao this upcoming Saturday, with the Rickmatech Mini-Mite Sports Car Challenge running the 6th round of their season at Suzuka this upcoming Monday. So a whole lot of stuff to look forward to here on Apex Racing TV, giving you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action, which came in spades here today. But I think for this broadcast, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Aaron Smith joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a mighty fine job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.